The morning began like any other. Quiet, pale light spilling across the kitchen floorboards, the scent of coffee tracing lazy spirals through the air, and the soft creak of the porch boards as I stepped out barefoot, robe loosely tied, cradling my mug in both hands. There was a stillness in the world, that kind of breathless hush you sometimes find in the earliest hours of a day that hasn't yet decided what it will become. And then I saw it, standing at the fence, framed by the bleached light of the sun still caught between clouds, was a lion. Not a statue, not a hallucination born from sleep deprivation or some strange trick of shadow, but an actual lion. Golden-maned, impossibly large, solid and regal, and, most startling of all, completely still. His body was coiled with latent strength, but his presence felt calm, deliberate. He wasn't crouched to pounce, wasn't pacing restlessly. He was simply watching me, as if I were the thing out of place. I didn't scream, I didn't run. My body seemed to forget how to react. There was fear, yes, primal and cold, an ancient signal deep in the marrow. But layered underneath it was something I didn't expect: familiarity. It was as if I'd opened a forgotten door in my house and found not a stranger, but someone I used to know sitting in the dark, waiting patiently to be remembered. At first I thought maybe I was dreaming, or maybe I was finally unraveling in some slow, poetic way. After all, the years hadn't been particularly kind, and grief tends to leave the world looking a little strange around the edges. But the lion remained, blinking slowly, his tail flicking once in the grass. Then, he did something that almost made me drop my mug. He turned his head slightly and looked behind him, then back at me, like a man checking his watch, and then looking at someone who's late. He wasn't just looking at me, he was waiting for me. And as absurd as it sounded, the idea took root in my chest and didn't let go. I felt it in my bones, in the tight place behind my ribs where dreams used to live before adulthood had boxed them away. The lion began to walk, slow and steady, along the broken fence line that separated my property from the forest, and every few steps, he'd glance back, as if to say, "Come on, Rosie, you've done this before." My name in his imagined voice struck me harder than it should have. I hadn't been called Rosie since my mother died. Everyone else used Rose. But Rosie belonged to someone who used to believe in magic, who used to spend hours outside pretending the world was full of hidden doors and old gods and creatures that spoke in riddles. I followed, not because I was brave, not even because I wanted to, but because it felt like something ancient inside me had already stood up and started walking, and I was simply catching up to myself. We didn't go far, just past the fence and into the woods that bordered the property, but as we walked, the world changed. Not visibly at first, not like in movies where trees suddenly glow or the sky shatters open, but subtly, like the way a room changes when someone important enters. The birds stopped calling. The air thickened and the path beneath our feet, previously choked with bramble and dead leaves, began to look familiar. I didn't recognize it at first, not consciously, but there was a strange ache in my chest, like homesickness for a place I couldn't name. The lion moved with a strange grace, neither hurried nor slow, as if he knew time here moved differently. When we reached the clearing, the breath caught in my throat. I knew this place, not from dreams or stories or photographs, but viscerally. There was an old stone sign, half swallowed by ivy and thyme, that read, "Haven Wildlife Sanctuary," and the moment I saw it, memories burst through the dam I hadn't known I'd built. Sunlight on hay bales, the smell of warm fur and animal musk, the sound of my father's laughter as he carried me on his shoulders, and the tiny golden-furred lion cub I had once fed with a bottle. I dropped to my knees, stunned, heart hammering with recognition so fierce it hurt. This was real. I had been here. I had loved this place, and somehow I had forgotten all of it. The lion stopped in the center of the clearing and sat watching me, not with hunger or suspicion, but with a kind of solemn affection, like someone witnessing a long overdue reunion. I whispered his name before I could think better of it. Mufasa. It spilled out of me like a secret I'd been keeping from myself. His ears flicked once. I laughed then, but it came out wrong, wet and broken, tangled with tears. How could I have forgotten something so enormous? This sanctuary had been my parents' dream, our family's life. We had cared for injured animals, wild ones who had nowhere else to go. And Mufasa had been the heart of it all, rescued as a cub, raised in our arms. When the sanctuary was shut down, some mix of legal pressure and funding collapse, I'd been too young to understand. They sent the animals away. They sent him away. And they told me it was better to forget, to move on, to be normal. So I had. I buried it. All of it. My childhood. My lion. Myself. But he hadn't forgotten me. He had come back. Not to haunt, not to hurt, but to remind. And as I sat in that clearing, surrounded by the bones of what we used to be, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Wonder. Grief. Yes. And shame. And longing so sharp it left splinters in my lungs. But also wonder. The kind that makes you believe maybe, just maybe, the world is still alive with meaning. That maybe your story isn't over. That the past doesn't vanish. It waits. Quietly, patiently, like a lion at the edge of the world, watching the house of the girl who used to believe in magic.